Have you ever been replaced so quickly that it made you wonder if you were ever seen at all? Or have you found yourself haunted by memories of someone who moved on before your side of the story was even finished? Or have you been screamed at, blamed at, or accused of things you never did and still somehow ended up being the one that apologized? Have you ever been so exhausted by broken trust that you started to question your own reality? Or have you ever felt like you were holding together a relationship that mentally you had already let go? When a breakup hits you out of nowhere, it doesn't just end the relationship, it ends the version of yourself you built inside of it. And the worst part isn't always the breakup itself, it's the chaos that comes after for you and the other person. The screaming words you can't unhear, the lies you believed because you wanted to believe them, the way trust shatters between the two of you, not all at once, but in pieces, until you're standing in a mess you don't even recognize. I think what makes breakups like this so gut-wrenching is how fast the story changes. One minute you're someone's everything, their best friend, and the next you're watching them replace you before you've even caught your breath. It makes you question everything. Was I ever enough? Did any of it mean anything? How could they move on so quickly when I can't even go a day without thinking about what we had? This isn't the kind of breakup that fades quietly and you just heal over time. This is the kind that haunts you, the kind where you replay the fights in your head and wonder if you could have done something different, or feel so sick every time you imagine them with someone else. Welcome back to Chasing Stability, where the in-between is somewhere in all of the hurt from the relationship that changed you for forever. And that's exactly where I was a year ago today, sitting on my couch on my birthday, trying to piece together the explosion that had just ensued. Broken trust, gaslit into questioning my own instincts, exhausted from begging for the bare minimum, watching the person I built a life with walk out in seconds after 3 years, and 2 weeks later hand a piece of the future we talked about to someone else like I never even existed. This episode isn't going to sugarcoat what this experience is like and the hurt of it all. And it's also not going to paint either side in a good light. It's going to be gut-wrenchingly truthful, because I don't think we talk enough about the heartbreak that doesn't just break your heart, it breaks your reality, and both sides feel the pain. So here we go. Relationships don't usually just end with like this one big blowout. You know what I mean? They end because of all the small things that slowly chip away at the trust and the safety and the love and the feel of the friendship. It starts to deteriorate. And if I'm being honest, it wasn't just him. There were things he did wrong, yes, and things I did wrong too. Maybe you've been there, fighting over money or chores or the way one person seems to carry the relationship while the other coasts. Maybe it's the arguments that keep circling back to the same thing, effort. Who's giving it? Who's not? And how much longer you can live like this. In my relationship, it showed up everywhere. He didn't like my friends, and I never got to meet any of his. He pushed me out of his whole world completely while I was bending over backwards to make him comfortable in mine. He lived with me, but he didn't contribute fairly. And every time I brought it up, it turned into another fight. I was paying in ways that weren't just financial. I was paying emotionally, mentally, spiritually. And I guarantee you, if I had him here beside me, he would say he felt the exact same way for himself. So I wasn't perfect either. I started shrinking. I stopped wanting to do things because it was easier than dealing with the fight that would usually come after. I held back pieces of myself. I deleted things that I shouldn't have had to delete. I kept secrets that weren't really even things that needed to be secrets, all because I was exhausted from explaining, defending, proving when I had never done anything to not be trusted. And this is what so many of us do. We compromise to keep the peace. We excuse patterns because we hope they'll change. We tell ourselves that one more conversation, one more chance, one more example will finally get them to see us clearly. But love doesn't work like that. You shouldn't have to beg someone to show up for you. You shouldn't have to teach someone how to respect you. The truth is, when the foundation is uneven, resentment always sneaks in. You start to feel like the teacher instead of the partner. You start to feel unheard, unseen, unvalued. And it's not because you didn't try hard enough, or it's not because they didn't try hard enough. It's because the weight was never meant to be carried one side. And that's how both of you felt. And in our case, that's how both of us felt. So when those cracks go ignored for long enough, the ending doesn't just hurt, it literally blindsides you like you're standing on train tracks. And if the little cracks weaken a relationship, broken trust is the wrecking ball that eventually takes it completely down. I've watched this aspect of relationships so many times. Once you lose trust, everything changes. Even the small arguments feel like proof of something bigger. Sometimes the fights aren't even about the fight, right? You're not actually mad about the dishes or the late night with no contact. You're mad because deep down you don't trust that they care enough to consider you. And when that trust is gone, every conversation turns into evidence. You start keeping track of the words being spoken. You start to notice shit isn't adding up. I lived in that cycle. My friends found dating profiles. I saw text conversations that destroyed the narrative of how our relationship started right at the foundation, blowing up everything that I thought I knew from the start, changing everything to doubt in my mind in less than 10 minutes. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt. So when all of that happened in a span of 6 months, I did. I overlooked it over and over again. And every time I chose to believe it, a little piece of me broke, right? Not because forgiveness was wrong or that I shouldn't have given him the benefit of the doubt, but because I knew. My body knew. I knew they were all lies, but I trusted him anyway because I loved him. I truly believed he loved me too. Therefore, I was willing to look over those mistakes. After those moments, the fights become louder, harsher. Once you have ignored your instincts and like kind of given this idea that you are going to forgive when really in your mind you haven't, it gets so much harder to not fight because you're kind of holding resentment. Words were thrown by both of us that can't be taken back. Accusations that sting even when you know they aren't true. You're just like saying things to like try to hurt somebody at that point. Defensiveness when all you wanted was honesty. They're the kind of fights that don't just hurt in the moment, they leave you shaking long after they're over because you realize the person standing across from you doesn't feel safe to you anymore. And maybe what's even worse than that is when you look at them and you realize that you can see it in their eyes that they feel the exact same way about you. And here's the wild part. When you're in that headspace of doubt, you start questioning what your relationship can handle. Situations that you would have normally just talked about, you lie about, or you just don't bring up at all, which is basically lying too because you're not talking about it when you should be. You delete text messages, you hide harmless conversations, you avoid certain topics, not because you're guilty of truly anything bad, but because you're tired of defending things that you should never be on trial for in the first place. You become smaller just to avoid setting off the next explosion because you'd give anything to just make it to the next hour without having a fight. That's what broken trust does. It makes love feel like a courtroom where every day you're on the witness stand, where proving your innocence becomes the focus instead of building a future. And don't get this statement wrong, because more than likely the other person is feeling the same way, right? And I understand that. Those eggshells are like landmines just waiting to be stepped on and explode. And once you hit that place, fights stop being about resolution. They just spiral. They just keep getting worse and worse and worse. They become survival. You're not trying to understand each other anymore. You're just trying to make it through the night without everything falling completely apart. And that's when you know, right? And if you've been here or if you're in that situation, you know deep down, it's not just fighting anymore. It's unraveling. It's the beginning of the end. And yet you stay. You keep patching the cracks, forgiving each other's slips, trying to hold together something that you feel is slipping until one day the unraveling cannot be ignored anymore. That's the thing about broken trust. It doesn't always end with quiet distance. Sometimes it ends in an explosion. And that's exactly what happened for us. The fight that finally broke us, the breakup that changed everything for me. You know, there are regular breakups that are hard. And then there are the endings that change the air you breathe. The kind where you don't just lose the relationship, you lose the version of yourself that kept fighting for it, that really believed that it would make it through. You know what I mean? For me, it happened on my birthday. And isn't that the cruel part? How often the hardest endings come on the days that were supposed to be so special. And it's not uncommon. I'm not looking for sympathy in this like statement about it. It's actually kind of scary how many people break up on like Christmas or New Year's or whatever. The short story is, for us, we fought on my birthday. The accusations flew off the handles, and the story that he believed versus what was actually happening were two completely different things. And suddenly the person who had lived with me for 3 years, sat at my family's table, was my very best friend, and was going to be the future person in my life forever in my eyes, was screaming at me like I was the worst enemy he could ever have imagined. And in that moment, it wasn't just the breakup. It was the years of exhaustion bubbling up and all those past relationship traumas that are like hiding what was actually being said in that moment. The trust had already left the room a while ago on both of our sides. We were both just trying to ignore it. So when I messed up and put a friendship with a guy he didn't trust in front of, honestly, my word to him, it was just the final blow. Maybe you've been there too, where they accuse you of the very thing they've been actually guilty of, where they twist the narrative until you're defending yourself for something that wasn't as bad as what they're portraying it to be, or nearly as hurtful as what they had actually done to you. When it happened to you, or me in this case, I looked the other way, right? When really I should have been asking, why isn't he able to give me the same benefit of the doubt that I gave him? But that's not what happened. Instead, the person who once swore they'd never leave walks out and never looks back. And what really stings is not just that they leave, it's how they leave, right? The shouting, the names, the way they make you feel like you deserved it. That's the part that haunts you in the quiet days to come. Not the goodbye, but the violence in their voices. They said what they said. Like they hated you for everything that you had done that they had done too. After the shouting stops, after the door slams closed, silence shows up. And the thing about the silence that comes after like a breakup like this is it's complicated. It feels wrong, which is how I feel like it should feel in a normal relationships. Like the absence of the chaos is almost louder than the chaos itself. You walk through your house and it feels hollow and empty, like you can still hear the echoes of what just went down for like hours. But if you're honest with yourself, there's also this part of that silent that feels like relief. For the first time in a long time, you don't have to brace yourself for the next fight or the next aggressive words or the next accusation or the next hurtful thing to be thrown at you. You don't have to defend yourself against anything at that point. You don't have to wonder what version of them is going to walk back through the door. It's disorienting to feel both heartbroken and relieved at the same time. To feel the ache of missing them while also feeling the weight lifted from their absence. That's the paradox of a toxic relationship ending. The silence is both the loneliest and the most peaceful thing you've felt in months, sometimes years. I think that's why breakups like this hit so hard, because you don't just mourn the relationship, you mourn the realization that the person you loved was capable of wounding you like that. And once you see that side, you can't unsee it and you can't unfeel it. And again, this goes for both sides, because I know for a fact by the look on his face when he left that that's how he felt about me. Like I had completely destroyed his idea of who I was. This kind of breakup makes you question everything. Did I ever really know them? Did they ever really know me or trust me or love me? And then those questions get the answer a lot of the times fairly quickly. For me, it was 2 weeks when he replaced me with a new girl. 2 weeks later, and he had someone new. And if you've ever been through a situation like that, you know that's the knife that twists deeper than the breakup itself, because it makes you feel worthless, replaceable, unseen, unlovable, you name it, the list goes on. It's like years of your life together could just be swapped out in an instant. Like all the memories, all the fights, all the love were disposable. It is a freaking gut punch to realize that while you're still picking up the pieces, they're already building something new. When you're grieving, they're posting. The next hit after being replaced is then being erased, right? One day you're still in their world, like they've moved on, but you're still in the world, right? On their social medias or in their phone or part of their daily scroll, whatever. And then suddenly you're blocked, cut off, gone. Being blocked stings in a whole new way people don't talk about enough. Because it's not just losing access, it's being told, I don't even want you to exist in my orbit anymore. And yet sometimes you catch yourself almost wishing for it, right? If you're not blocked, you're like, man, I wish they would have blocked me, because at least being blocked means they felt something strong enough to act on it. How twisted is that? That's how heartbreak rewires your logic. The silence that comes after you being blocked is deafening. You start to wonder if 3 years of your life really boiled down to just the click of a button to be erased. And then, just as fast as you were removed, they shock your whole world again and break no contact. Maybe it's after you see each other somewhere and the ache is forced on your mind. So like now you have to address it because now like you can't ignore it anymore. Or maybe it's just someone's in their feelings more than normal, so they unblock. Or if you're the one that was blocking someone else, maybe you unblocked them. Whatever it may be, it doesn't matter. The feelings are always the same. It's a flood of emotions immediately when either side reaches out, when it actually goes through and like the message is received. There's anger involved, there's relief, there's hope, there's confusion, because after all of the screaming, the replacing, the blocking, here you are, however long after, and you're both opening a door, you are both finally learning how to lock. Spiral is honestly an understatement for what happens to the mind. And I can only speak for myself in this situation, so I don't know what other people feel like, but I feel like it's probably the same as mine. Do they miss me? Do they regret it? Or is this just another form of control? Because let's be honest, when someone moves on in 2 weeks, 4 weeks, days, a month, they're not healed. They didn't come back because they're ready to fix it. They come back because they want to know they still could have it if they wanted it. That's one lesson I wish I would have learned through someone else, because breaking no contact isn't about reconciliation. Maybe sometimes, but like 9 out of 10, it's the ego. It's about making sure they still hold power in your story. And if you're not careful, it drags you right back into the cycle you fought so hard to escape, which is exactly what happened for me. The contact was broken after 6 months. I feel like it's always 6 months, but anyways, seeing each other in a public place for the first time led to an 8-hour phone call that led to hope that everything would change back, which then led to 2 weeks of me devastated and reliving the worst parts about letting him go all over again. Then that's when I finally slammed my door shut, locked it, deadbolted it, nailed it shut. The delusion that had creeped in about the relationship that could have been was now being replaced with what the relationship actually was. And once you finally stop hoping they'll come back different, like changed, improved, like they've seen their ways and they want you back, blah, 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 that's when the healing can truly start. It doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen without tears, without questions, without scrolling too far back in your camera roll. But eventually you stop waiting for a text that isn't coming. You stop looking at old pictures. You stop letting the ghost of them stay in your life. And more than likely, it's just going to be one random day you wake up and it just feels like it's gone. And that's when it shifts. That's when you realize they can't hurt you anymore. Not because of closure, not because they came back, not because they explained themselves or you explained yourselves or they finally understand your story or vice versa or whatever, but because you let go. And in that release, that healing can finally begin. But be careful, because when you let go and you start to heal yourself, they're going to come pounding back at that door. And with that, that is where we stop for today. Because in 2 days, we step into part 2 of this series. We talk about the transformation after we reach the door being locked. So if part 1 felt like your story, I need you to come back for part 2 in 2 days, because the pain might have hurt you like you never expected it, because I know mine did, and it was awful. But it's also going to change you for the better, and we're going to talk all about it, and I can't wait for you to hear it. This is Chasing Stability, and I'll meet you in the in between in 2 days.